Self-compassion, if you know how to do it, is something you can actually practice now. So mindful awareness of our own suffering is the first step. Hi, this is Jim Breon, and welcome to this YouTube channel where we discuss all things mental health. Today, what I wanted to talk with you about is something that's crucially important in recovery, especially from issues like abuse, trauma, attachment trauma, and addiction. And it's something that I think some people don't actually think about. And what I'm speaking about is self-compassion. Often we are much better at having compassion for other people than we are for ourselves. And if you think about the reasons for that, it's kind of curious. Why is it that often we're so hard on ourselves, and yet we can have compassion for other people who are suffering? And I think part of that is, we develop these internal critics. We figure that we have to be really hard on ourselves and don't let ourselves, get by with anything, and that way we're going to, make ourselves better, which is really kind of a self-defeating way of thinking. Another reason is that I think most of us have never actually been taught what self-compassion is or how to do it. Having compassion for yourself does not mean, it's not the same as self-esteem. It's not giving yourself a pass. It's not self-pity. It's not self-indulgence, and it's not narcissism. Self-compassion is being kind and understanding to yourself when you're confronted with personal failings. That's actually a definition from Kristin Neff, who is a researcher on self-compassion. She and Chris Germer are the two people that I'll be referring to as far as the process of developing compassion for one's self. Now, self-compassion is also different than self-love. Self-love is valuing yourself as a human being who's worthy of love and respect. And that's kind of a more stable practice and something that takes longer to build. Self-compassion, if you know how to do it, is something you can actually practice now. So first, let's talk about what compassion is in general. Compassion, essentially, is when you recognize another being's suffering and something in you wants to make a difference. That's what compassion is. Whether you recognize a baby who's crying and you have that feeling like, oh, what can I do to help? Or a little puppy who's got a wounded paw who might be whimpering. There's something in you that is elicited that wants to make a difference because you're recognizing that being is suffering. So that's, in a nutshell, what compassion is. If compassion starts with recognizing somebody else's suffering, you have to recognize your own suffering and develop some mindful awareness of how hard this is for you, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you're struggling with. Recognizing that this is hard, not telling yourself, I shouldn't be so upset about this. That's invalidation of your own feelings. I should just get over it. I just need to suck it up. Those aren't the kind of things, hopefully, that you would tell a good friend. You wouldn't tell a good friend who's struggling, just suck it up, get over it. What are you complaining about? So why would we talk to ourselves that way? So mindful awareness of our own suffering is the first step. And the next step is what we call finding the common humanity in your suffering. This really is about looking at your own humanity in that you're imperfect just like everyone else. You experience pain and you make mistakes just like everyone else. In a sense, finding the common humanity in your suffering gives your suffering a bigger container. What I mean by that is if you think about it metaphorically, if you had a glass of water, right, and you put some black ink into it, over a very short period of time, that glass of water would turn black. But if you took that glass of water and you drove to the ocean and you poured it into the ocean, now try to find the black ink. And you can't find it because it's dispersed into a greater space that can hold it. And that's the same kind of thing that happens when we can find the common humanity in our suffering. meaning that, wow, this really hurts, and I'm not the only person that struggles this way, and I don't have to go through this alone. I don't have to carry this pain by myself. In a sense, when you can find the common humanity in your struggle, like looking at how many other people struggle being a single mom or a single dad, how many other people struggle with bipolar disorder or depression. I'm not the only person. In a sense, you're looking at your personal pain as a little less personal because it's actually more of like the human condition. And when you can do that, then you can employ the third step in developing self-compassion, and that is offering to yourself some of the same kindness that you would to a good friend or somebody that you love. If you think about a good friend, who's struggling with some issue, say that you're struggling with the failure with a loss of a job or the ending of a relationship, and you're beating up on yourself for it. Maybe you feel shame or you feel guilt. If you had a good friend who was going through the same thing, would you tell your friend, wow, what a jerk. How could you be so stupid to let that go? What the heck is wrong with you? Can't you do anything right? You always screw up. Everything you touch turns to... You wouldn't talk to your friend that way, but you might talk to yourself that way. So recognizing the difference in the way you speak to yourself and the way you speak to somebody that you care about, that's the kind of kindness that you have to start offering to yourself. So it's mindful awareness of your own suffering, finding the common humanity in it, and offering yourself some kindness like you would for anyone else. And it kind of goes like, wow, this really hurts. This is a moment of suffering. This is a real struggle. And I'm not the only person that goes through this, and I don't need to go through it alone. And in this moment of suffering, I'm not going to beat up on myself. In this moment of suffering, I'm not going to tell myself what a failure I am. That's kind of how you start to practice it. But a lot of us struggle with compassion for ourselves because of guilt, shame, regrets, maybe going through a divorce or loss, trauma, or addiction. But especially when it comes to things like addiction, having compassion for yourself, not giving yourself a pass, but recognizing that you've been trying to numb a lot of your difficult feelings for a very long time, and it's created havoc in your life. Compassion for yourself is important. One way to test whether you're being compassionate towards yourself is to check in with your own self-dialogue. And if the words you're speaking to yourself, so to speak, are too harsh for a loved one, they're too harsh for you. Another thing we can do to start practicing self-compassion is by practicing self-care, taking care of ourselves, giving yourself time to either just do something for yourself, to relax, to exercise, to eat better, to take care of your body. Sometimes journaling can be really helpful in recognizing, the way that you are kind of hard on yourself. And one thing that might be helpful is even writing a letter to yourself in the voice of a good friend, talking to yourself as if you're channeling a good friend. And it's really interesting when you start to notice how different that voice is than the inner critic. Another thing that you can do to develop self-compassion is to practice loving kindness for yourself and for other people. This is something that is also referred to as metta, M-E-T-T-A, loving kindness practice or meditation. Some things to think about, and I'm really curious to hear what you might think about this whole idea of self-compassion. How maybe what your struggles with it, or maybe what you think about the whole idea. So feel free to leave a comment, and I encourage you to like and subscribe, sign up for notifications so we can let you know when more material is coming out. And in the meantime, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.